Dobrý deň, dámy a páni, milí hostia, milí priatelia, ktorých tu poznávam z rôznych iných podujatí. Sme veľmi radi, že ste si našli čas na toto výnimočné podujatie, ktoré sa koná už 7-krát, 4. ročník Orange Biznis Fórum. Je to, kvôli čomu sme sa tu dnes stretli. A hneď vám poviem pár nejakých úvodných emotívnych momentov, ktoré sú pre vás dôležité, ale teraz by bolo možno fajn aj vám vysvetliť, ako bude toto podujatie prebiehať, keďže náš dnešný hosť bude prednášať svoju success story in English, tak ak náhodou sa tu niekto necíti úplne na angličtinu, máme také tlmočnícke staničky, ktoré ste si mohli vyzdvihnúť pri registrácii a pozdravujeme aj pánov tlmočníkov, ktorí sú v staničke. Máme si vás oskúšať, ako vám to dnes ide? Poviem vám niekoľko slovíčok. Karburátor. OK, zatiaľ ste sa nechytili, ale určite budete mať na to čas. Takže ďakujeme aj vám za to, že ste dnes tu, že budete prípadne kde tu trošku pomáhať v tom vnímaní a prijímaní dnešnej prednášky. A samozrejme, ak sa chcete zapojiť, bude tu aj sekcia s názvom Q&A, Questions and Answers, alebo otázky a odpovede. Po takom menšom coffee breaku sa k tomu dostaneme. Ak sa náhodou ostýchate klásť otázky osobne, tak môžete ich napísať na lístoček a ja ich potom budem čítať a urobím tú hanbu za vás, keby ste chceli. Alebo sa môžete aj osobne pýtať prostredníctvom mikrofónu, alebo môžete tie lístočky vypísať niekedy cez coffee break, alebo ste to už možno urobili, takže nemusíte sa báť, že by na vašu otázku neprišiel rád. A je dosť možné, že na všetky otázky zodpovie pán Lauda dnes už počas tej prednášky, ktorá už o chvíľu začne. Ak náhodou niekto z vás nevie, o čom je Orange Biznis Fórum, tak len pár vetami vám vysvetlím, že je to naozaj unikátne podujatie, kde ide o to, aby svetové osobnosti biznisu vás inšpirovali možno vo vašich biznisových životoch, ale verím, že aj v takých osobných a ľudských, lebo ako isto viete, tak jedno od druhého sa oddeliť nedá. Teda myslím si, že ženy v biznise to vedia možno trošku viac. Mužom sa to niekedy darí úspešne oddelovať. A vypnite si prosím svoje mobilné telefóny. Osobnosti, ktoré sa už zúčastnili Orange Biznis Fóra v minulosti, naozaj patria do kategórie svetového top biznisu, ako napríklad môžem spomenúť pán Steve Wozniak, zakladateľ spoločnosti Apple. Bol niekto sa pozrieť na ňoho? Dvaja. A 4 z Orangeu. Potom napríklad aj pán Steve Forbes, jeden z významných vydavateľov, a za seba môžem povedať, že som vďaka Orange Biznis Fóru mala možnosť sa stretnúť aj s pánom Markom Messierom, ktorý tu bol, myslím, že minulého roku, a dokonca sme ho nahrali aj do Fanrádia a pozdravujem aj Radio Express. Dobrý deň. Mark Messier, legenda NHL a aktuálne aj generálny manažer New York Rangers. No a samozrejme, že dobre viete, že našim dnešným hosťom je pán Niki Lauda, ktorý tu už sedí v prvom rade, zabáva ho rakúsky veľvyslanec. Hello, good morning, Mr. Lauda. How are you? Very well. How was the flight?
I was driving.
You were driving?
Yes.
How fast?
Speed limit.
Speed limit. Okay. I guess you have a different speed limit than all the other Austrians, no?
Yes.
You're a little bit. You're allowed to drive a little bit faster. Takže pán Niki Lauda je našim dnešným hosťom. Neviem, či mne prináleží hovoriť niečo z jeho životopisu, ale asi viete, že je to trojnásobný majster sveta vo Formuli 1, že je to podnikateľ v oblasti leteckej dopravy a že je to určite veľmi inšpirujúci a inšpiratívny človek, čo teda zistíme už o chvíľu počas jeho prednášky. Samozrejme, že každý rok a pri každom tomto fóre je obrovská bitka o post predskokana a vždy sa uchádzajú mnohí slovenskí úspešní podnikatelia o to, aby mohli mať krátku prednášku pred tými svetovými osobnosťami. Čuduj sa svete, zatiaľ sa to darí vždy len jednému, je to generálny riaditeľ spoločnosti Orange Slovensko, pán Pavol Lančarič.
Vaša excelencia, dámy a páni, ďakujem pekne, že ste prišli. Ďakujem, Adela, za takýto krásny úvod. Hneď sa to ľahšie začína. Moja úloha je veľmi krátka. Chcem vás všetkých srdečne privítať v mene spoločnosti Orange Slovensko a dúfam, že tak, ako sa nám podarilo, chcem priniesť v minulosti 6 naozaj inšpirujúcich osobností, že tomu bude tak aj teraz. Máme hostia, ktorý nepriletel, ktorý šoféroval v rámci speed limitu a prišiel iba tu z vedľajšej Viedne a je to skvelé, že máme takého suseda a takého hostia zároveň. Pán Niki Lauda, nech sa páči.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to, let's say, bring you up to speed. What happened in my life? Basically, that I'm standing here in front of you, the way I look, the way I use my cap, where I've lost my ear, all these kind of things I would like to tell you. So I was born in an Austrian industrial family who was running basically serious business in Austria. I was brought up, let's say, normal. I failed the first degree of school. I failed the second degree of school. My parents got more and more upset about me because they put the pressure on me that the Lauda cannot be bad in school. So finally, because I was driven when I was 12, 13 years old, I was always in the factories of my family business. And there I was driving tractors, cars, mopeds, whatever I could get in young age, without a driving license, certainly I've used. So suddenly I experienced that my direction was more going towards cars and tractors than industrial business. So what was the quickest way to relieve the pressure of my parents and grandparents? I went to a Matura school, which is already the last way of getting the Abitur done. And next to me was a young lady, said, look, yesterday I passed all the tests and everything is fine. And the guy behind me said, why don't you take your paper, put your name on top and show it to your parents? So I said, this is not a bad idea. So I gave it to this gentleman, and unfortunately he took her name out, but in such a bad way that you could see on 100 meters that this was modified. Nevertheless, I went home. I remember my parents sitting there, all waiting for the relief that I passed the Abitur, and I said, here, I made it, and the family was happy. I threw this thing away right away, and I decided to go motor racing. So my parents were not happy about my decision, but they basically could not stop me. So I worked my way 2 or 3 years through lower levels of racing, and then I ended up in '74 with Ferrari, which at the time, as you know, was the top team, and I started my Formula 1 career. In these days, I have to say that at least I raced from '70s until '85, and in these days, at least 2 got killed every year, because motor racing was so dangerous at the time that there were 16 drivers, basically 2 every year, so you could work out when is your time, basically. So it was a very, let's say, compared to today's times, it was, you cannot compare it, because the cars were aluminum cars, the circuits were not safe, there were trees, there were guardrails, so it was really not easy, let's put it this way. But nevertheless, if you want to drive cars on the limit, if you know the risk you get yourself involved, which I had to decide before I went racing, I certainly did it. So this is basically a decision. You either have to think about it, and either you are brave enough to do it, or you don't. So I raced. I won the championship in '75, pretty easy. Then I started the '76 season in the Ferrari. I think out of the first 8 races, I won 6, so I was dominating the season without any problems. And then we had a funny discussion amongst the drivers. I was already at that time the driver spokesman about safety, to think of the future, what can be changed. And in Long Beach, which was well before the Nürburgring race, we had a drivers meeting, and I said that the cars been going so much quicker this year that going to the Nürburgring, which is a very particular circuit because one lap is 22 kilometers long, one lap, driving through the woods of Germany basically, and it was a very dangerous place. So I said to the drivers, I think the cars are getting too quick, so we have to be careful if this race circuit as it is still acceptable. We had a vote, and 3-2, I was against it to race, and 3 other guys were for it. We were 5 guys. So the majority decided to go and race. That year, because this was the last year where the Nürburgring had some developments done to make it safer. So I had to accept the decision of my colleagues. I certainly went there to race, and in the third lap or fourth lap I had to change my tires. Then I left the pits, and then I drove for about 8 minutes. I have no memory whatsoever. This is completely stopped. And then I had a horrendous accident. The accident was, I can only tell you because I saw it in television. It is quite interesting how these things happen. I mean, if somebody of you had a bad accident, suddenly you lose memory. And I lost memory because I hit so hard the rocks that I lost my helmet at the same time, and the impact must have been so hard, which is a protection for human brains, basically, that I lost all the memories. So I have no idea what happened, but I can tell you because I saw it in television. My car turned right, then I came back, another car hit me, and then I was sitting for about 55 seconds in 800 degrees without the helmet, unconscious in the car. And all the other guys had to stop because, thank God, I was parked in the middle of the circuit, because otherwise guys would have driven by, which is in these days normal. And then there was a little Italian guy, Merzario, who was trying to get in, and then finally he undid the belt and pulled me out. So it was really the last second when he pulled me out, and then I was taken to hospital. And I can only tell you what happened then, because for the first hospital I have no memory whatsoever. The first memory came back when I heard the helicopter start, which they had to fly me to another hospital. And I still remember this face of the doctor. There was a guy sitting next to me with this bottle here, and he had a white dress on. And I looked at him. I couldn't see much, but I said, "How long is the flight?" I don't know why. I don't know why I wanted to know how long is the flight, but anyway, he said 45 minutes. So I said, fine, 45 minutes. So anyway, they took me to the serious hospital, to the intensive care. And there, basically, I was on and off realizing things around me. And one bad thing happened to me where I told the doctors afterwards, they suddenly were discussing, if we give him oxygen, he's going to die. If we do this, he might survive. If we try this, and they argued forward and backwards in front of me. And I said, shit, I must be in trouble. See if they don't know in what direction to go. So then I lost memory again. Then I went unconscious, so to say. But then I had a bad experience, which is also important for normal life, that at one stage they got my wife to the hospital. I think it was on the next day, and they brought her in, but I didn't know because I could not see anything. All I could do is hear, so because everything was completely destroyed. And she came in and she started to cry in a real bad way. So I said, poof, so if she cries like this, I really must be in serious bad shape. So this was not very, let's say, motivating in a way that the doctors discuss about what treatment. My wife basically cries and gives me up, so it was a very difficult time to say. So after 2 days, because I don't really know the time involved, because you have no watch and you don't know what's happening, I was asked by a nurse if I want the last rites. And then I said, in the conditions I'm in, maybe it's not a bad idea. Because if there's somebody, we just discussed it, who is up there, maybe he's going to help me. So I nodded, because all I could do is nodded, and then nothing happened. So I was lying there in intensive care, so there were a lot of movements around me, because there were other patients there too. And I was lying there for quite a while. Nothing happened, and I felt something on my shoulder, but I couldn't identify it. And then I thought, what's going on here? And then I realized that the priest was here, thought I'm unconscious, gave me the last rite and left without talking to me. And then I really got upset because I expected him to speak with me and help me and say, God will take care of me. And honestly, this was one of the most important parts of this, that now I said, now I'm going to fight forever to stay alive, because this is, for me, is too much. The priest comes and doesn't talk to me. So it was a very positive input. And then over the last, my real problem was not the burns, because they've been taken care afterwards. The problem was my lung, because I inhalated so much plastic and fume smoke when I was sitting in the car that my lung was damaged. And therefore they told my wife on Monday night that they x-rayed the lung, and they said I will not survive because the lung only works in the last little part of what is left over to give me oxygen. And they basically told her that I'm not going to survive the next night. So everything they did, thank God, was wrong, because I'm still here. And after 3 days, the lung improved. They told me, by the way, if I would have been a smoker at that time, I would not have survived, because the last reserve of my healthy lung, that little bit, made me recover it. Because the lung is either working or it's not working. There's nothing in between. So either it's dead because of doesn't work, or it improves to a normal standard as before. So after that, I never had a lung problem anymore. So, and after a couple of days fighting for my life, I was back with the lung, basically, slowly, and then they had to operate my skin. They put the skin of my leg into my face to cover all this up. And then I was released, or I signed a letter to be released coming out of the hospital after about 2 weeks. And then I went home, and then I had to take a decision. What I want to do now? Will I continue to race, or will I not continue to race? This was the number one decision. It was my job at the time, and I liked it. But I made myself a very simple, analytical decision. First of all, I was not surprised that I had an accident, because racing was, as I said in the beginning, 2 people every year got killed, so I told to myself I was lucky I'm still here. So to do a comeback out of this misery must be a real challenge. This is what I told myself. And then I was at home, basically in Salzburg. I had a guy with me who was training me and trying to get me fit again. And I looked down to the lake. There was a nice view, and put good music on and said, do you want to take the chance or you don't? So I decided, yes, I want to go back into racing. So, and people who have bad experience in car accidents or other accidents or illness or whatever, the worst thing for me is to stop your life in this part where your illness hits you, or if a bad experience hits you, because you will never overcome it, and you drag it on basically all through your life. So in my case, but it was an extreme certainly, because racing was dangerous and I had to take a decision, either I go back or I retire. I was sure that I want to come back. So I had to solve the problem of the past in a way that I had to accept I had the accident, and I had to fight to be back driving style and taking chances like before, because otherwise you cannot race halfway. So I went to Fiorano, which was the test circuit of Ferrari, and tried the car 1 week before the Monza race, which was 5 weeks after the accident, to see if I physically can drive. I had a huge problem here with my skin, which was not basically really glued on. I had a problem here because they forgot to give me some transplant here, so this hurt a lot. So anyway, I tried to drive the car in Fiorano, and honestly I got in and drove normal lap times without any pressure, and I decided there, yes, I want to come back and race in Monza, which was the next coming up race. So Ferrari at the time was not really happy that I came back, because he had Regazzoni and Reutemann already as my replacement. So Regazzoni was my team colleague, but Reutemann was the new guy, because he thought I never come back. So therefore he took Reutemann, and suddenly there were 3 cars in Monza, but my contract says only 2 cars, basically. So I did my test, and then old Enzo Ferrari, which for me still is the most charismatic and from personality standpoint of view, one of the outstanding people in the world from my experience. He called me in his office and he said, how are you doing, and my son, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm fine, I want to go to Monza. And he said, I think it's better, typically Italian, don't go to Monza, go to a race later, because if you lose the championship, it was because of your accident. And this is exactly the opposite I was thinking, because I had to overcome my accident. I had to get in as quick as I can to get rid of my fear and all the problems. And I said, I don't care about the championship. I really want to get in. So I said to him, no, I'm not accepting this. I will go to Monza, finish. This is my contract. I can drive your car, give me a car and I drive. So he was not happy about this, basically, because in the end he was right, but I'll tell you later. And then I went to Monza, and then the following happened, that I was completely written fit by the Austrian doctors, because you had to have a certificate that you are fit. I was fit. I came there on Thursday afternoon. You can imagine the press and whatever pressure on me like you do not believe. And suddenly they said, you have to go and do a medical check. I said, why the hell I have to do a medical check? Yes, because we want that. So we went to a Milan hospital. They kept me there for 5 hours and checked me. So I don't know if this was a Ferrari intention to make sure or whatever, because insurance at these days was not involved. So nevertheless, they checked me and did this and that, and they couldn't find anything suddenly, and they had to let me go. But the whole afternoon I was just upset that this is all happening to me. So on Friday morning I came back. I started actually in good mood to start the first lap going out of the pits. Like in Fiorano, I put second gear in and couldn't drive. It was like a wall came down, pure fear, and the fear was not my memory of the accident. The fear was that I go underneath the guardrail and take my head off. This was the picture I had, which jumped on me like you do not believe, and I physically could not drive. So I put third gear in, and I was really like this, anxious, and I could not get going. So I did a very slow lap, back into the pits, stopped, and thought, what the hell went wrong? Because in Fiorano I drove, and here I cannot drive. So I thought about it, and the pressure of the team and the journalists and what's going on, whatever. So thank God I decided I go back to the hotel. I stopped after one lap, back to the hotel and try to find out what went wrong. So I was thinking the whole night, what is the problem now? And I realized that the pressure which I put on myself to perform like I did before the accident right away, with all the Monza race and the journalists and the pressure and pressure and all this and this, was for me too much. So I said, I go the next day to this stupid race and I just go there on my own. So I ignore the competition, I ignore the timing of the other cars. I just go there to understand the feeling of me and the car and get slowly going and try to get confidence back that I control the car and not the car controls me. And therefore, hopefully, I can overcome my fear. I tell you, this was the right thing to do. So I went out of the pitch completely on my own. I ignored all the times of the others, which you normally don't do. You always look what the other guys are doing and forward and backwards. And I developed, even I did not drive on Friday at all. I was 5 weeks not driving. And on Saturday afternoon, I was quickest Ferrari. And I was, I think, a third or fourth position on the grid. So I said, this is not a bad performance. Yeah, if you look at my friend Regazzoni, especially Reutemann, the Argentinian, he was a very arrogant guy. He never had an accident. He was always there, and I blew him off right away. So it gave me a good feeling. So the first problem of overcoming a huge mental problem was done. So then I go to the race on the next day, and I was in the second row of the grid, and I was looking up to the start. We drove to the start position. I was waiting, where's the guy with the flag? Because the races were started with a flag. And I was looking, there was no guy there. I was out of gear, and everybody took off. So I said, shit, what's going on here? So I put my gear in. I was, instead of fourth, I was suddenly 15th because I missed the start. So what happened, they introduced the light start, but nobody told me. So, which I was not happy, so I went afterwards to the Ferrari people and said, are you crazy? You should have told me. Yeah, but anyway, they forgot to tell me. So I finished the race, I think, fourth or fifth, and I already felt that I was getting back into the old type of driving and taking chances and whatsoever. So I continued to race until the last race in Fuji. In Fuji, there were the following conditions. It rained like you do not believe the whole day. The circuit was flooded by water, rivers coming across, and everybody decided there, all the drivers together, we cannot drive because the water is too much. And at 4 in the afternoon, famous Mr. Ecclestone turned up with a little Japanese race director and said, we're going to start the race now because television coverage, it's getting dark, we have to start the race. And I said to Bernie, are you nuts? It's the same water than before. Why didn't we start at 12? Yeah? No, we have to start. So everybody went out because the drivers these days had different opinions, not to say they were all stupid, but this is the way it was. I did one single lap just to give Ferrari the start money, but I did not accept the conditions why we were forced to race under these conditions. So for me this was ridiculous and stupid, and I stopped, got out of the car and told everybody the reason. And Hunt then, who was my biggest opposition at the time, finished 4th because Alan Jones let him go by. He was only 5th in the race, and he won the championship by 1 point over me. Yeah? So why not? I mean, one championship more or less. For me, I didn't care, to be honest, because really my problem was the accident. I mean, it was not this last race, whether wet or not. My real problem was that, thank God, I survived and I nearly killed myself. So to make this story short, the interesting thing is just to follow up for you. Ron Howard is a very famous American movie maker who did Apollo 13 and a lot of famous Oscar-winning movies. Now is producing a movie which is called Rush, which is the 76th season happening. So the fight between the Playboy Hunt against me, serious guy, fighting to the end, the championship, and then he won it and I lost it. So basically they're producing a movie now which is quite interesting. I was part of it to tell them how things were in the old days. So I helped them to bring them up to speed. But after I've read the book, what they have done out of it, it's a little bit more Hollywood now than it was in these days. But nevertheless, I think it's going to be a great movie because a lot of top people are basically producing it. So then I won the championship again in '77 with Ferrari. Then I retired and started my aviation work. I started with Lauda. We went to Australia, flew long haul, better product, good prices, modern seats, so whatever everybody expects, we try to achieve in these days. But then I had Lufthansa as a partner in Lauda Air, and Lufthansa forced me to take Austrian Airlines as a shareholder into Lauda Air, because for a small market like Austria, it is better to combine airlines together in one go than let them fight for, let's say, a few passengers. And for the time being, it was a very clever decision because financially to work together with Lufthansa and Austrian Airlines is better than to fight alone. But the biggest mistake I did in my business life was that when you try to combine different cultures, Austrian Airlines was a state airline, Lauda Air and Tyrolean at the time were the young upcoming different airlines. If you combine two cultures, our expectation was that we can speed Austrian Airlines up with being quicker, more efficient and whatsoever, but the opposite happened. So the avalanche of Austrian Airlines state airline basically pushed Lauda Air and Tyrolean down to a level which I did not accept anymore at the time. And this was about 11 or 12 years ago. I sold it then to Austrian Airlines and basically stopped the aviation. Then I had a 3-year stop in my contract because I cannot open every year another airline. But 3 years later, I decided to look into the low-cost business, basically, a new way of flying, which everybody is aware of. And I decided, yes, I want to start with a white piece of paper, and this is important maybe also for your business. White piece of paper, I was just sitting down, analyzing what is the basis you need with a new airline, because airline is a very hard competition, like in mobile telephones, it's the same all around the world. What do I need to have basically a cost structure that I can react on markets up and downs, oil prices up, yield of tickets down, and all these kind of things. So I found a very nice, very young financial guy in Vienna. In these days, he was 24 years old, and we two together made a concept, what do we have to do? So we knew basically what we have to do, but then I had no name because Lauda Air was sold and Austrian Airlines had the right of Lauda Air. So what was the logic? We call it Niki. because this is the other alternative which was known. So then we called it Fly Niki, and put a fly on the airplanes, because Fly Niki and whatever, and started with Airbuses, a low-cost concept, which was as follows. I went straight away to Air Berlin in these days, this was now 9 years ago, and said to them, I started an airline in Austria, you are already flying in Germany, if I be a competitor to you, it makes no sense, why don't we work together? So I give you 24% of my company, and you connect me up to your sales, internet and sales distribution. Because this is the most important you need in aviation, the proper sales tools. So I plugged myself into the Air Berlin system. Everything was done in Germany. In Vienna we had basically the airline. We had an overhead in these days from about 25 people. Today it's 48 people. And all the rest, all the sales and the whole thing, I came out of this critical mass, because if you are so small, to fight the others is difficult. So joining Air Berlin, we suddenly had, there were at that time 73 airplanes. We had 4 in Vienna. So it was basically 73 plus 4. So we had a big mass which we already started to move. And then we grew in 8 years to 22 airplanes in Vienna alone. Air Berlin went up to 150 airplanes altogether. And every single year we made money, which is the most important, because in aviation it's not easy. So we had new airplanes, and our concept was a very simple one. It was, first of all, I have to fly whenever you want to fly. So if I fly at 6 in the morning and you want to fly at 7, you will choose the flight at 7. So you have to find the right times, which is difficult because of slot restrictions and other implementations. But then it is the question of the price. People today decide only on the price, unfortunately. You can have the best product, you always get compared to the lowest price. This is, unfortunately, the development which happens today, and nobody can stop it. But when you then have the right price, and this depends very much on your cost structure, otherwise you cannot sell cheap tickets when you operate expensive, then you have to give an add-on which people do not expect. And I had this long-term relationship with this company in Vienna, which is called Do & Co., which is a catering company which started with Lauda many years ago. Today is the biggest caterer around the world. And I started with him a low-cost catering concept where you get, for example, a brown bread with Schnittlauch. What is Schnittlauch in? Yeah, for example, which you never get. Yeah. Thank you. Which you never get on an airplane normally. But it's fresh bread with butter and Schnittlauch. So you can do different things. Or we served from Frankfurt to Vienna Frankfurter sausages. Frankfurter sausages cost nothing if you do it. Yeah? And suddenly the people talked about the right timing on flying, the right price for the tickets, very competitive prices, and on top you get newspapers and food. And we had in 8 years 4.6 million passengers. So we really took half of the Austrian Airlines passengers away in 8 years with this concept, and always made money. So the most important is that you have to have the right business idea, and you have to check if the business idea is the right one, and then you have to go it. Because there's always people who tell you, no, you have to change this and take the bread away and do this and that. I said, listen, I don't take the bread away, I take your company car away. It's much better because the passengers will stay and you have no car if our cost is too high. But if I take this away, you sooner or later will have no company car and no job. So this is stupid. So basically you have to really come down to the basics. And I must say this I learned in sport. Because in sport you can argue forwards and backwards what went wrong. So if you don't win, it's so in normal business, people judge if you did a good job or a medium job or a bad job. So it depends on who is the judge. But in racing, it is the result. Either the first, the second, or third. You can't argue about this. So if you're always the fifth, there's something wrong. And what do normally people do? They look inside and say, yeah, here I could change a little bit, but this and this and this and this and this. And what you learn in sport, if you want to be successful in this, I think any sportsman in the world who is top has to first look and find the problem in himself. Because to look a little bit, you find something and you're happy. But if you look deeper, and you re-ask yourself again, is it not this the reason, or that's the reason, this and that, and then you really come down to your own problem, what did you do wrong? And if you fix that problem first, then you can, logically thinking, try to adjust the other variables which are hurting you. But what people normally do is they find nothing amongst themselves, always blame the others, and then they go all the time in the wrong direction. And this is basically what I've learned in sport. And for me, it's better to take a wrong decision than to take no decision. Because if you take no decision, you have 3 different opinions in one office. Then you sit there and you think who is right or who is wrong, and then you leave the office. So what happens? The 3 opinions continue to go in 3 different directions. So then I always say to them, look, I have no idea now who is more clever, but I tell you, we go in your direction. Why? It's because at least we have one direction. Now we find out is it right or was it wrong. When it's wrong, we find out quickly, and then we can change. So the pragmatic approach of solving problems you learn in sport when you're honest to yourself, and this is basically what I continued even today. So always be pragmatic and come to the point, and then take a decision. Sometimes I can tell you it's not always, let's say, easy, because if you have a marriage, for example, and I have a very good marriage, I must say, I got married the 2nd time, and I have twins which are 2.5 years old, and whatever. But Birgit donated me a kidney when I got her to know 8 years ago or 9 years ago now, because I had a kidney problem, and I just knew her for about 8 months. And then I had a kidney problem. I asked my son if he would help me. He certainly came. He did the test, and unfortunately did not fit. Then she said, I'm going to do the test. So I said, you can do the test because you will never, ever fit, because this is very seldom that you have these 5 parameters going together. But she did fit. And then I had the biggest problem with myself, honestly, to say, how can I accept this? And then I had long discussions with myself, because I said, I will not accept it. And then she said, look, I'm going to do this for you. You can do whatever you want. This is my decision, and I'm going to do it. So what I try to say, it is she's a tough cookie in a positive way. But when I come with my pragmatic issues every day, like with the kids or this and that, then she always tells me, you have no idea. So I say, okay, let's wait and see. So what I'm trying to say is that if you have a different way of going through your life, and I adapted my system in such a way, because I must say in the past, I would say 75–80% I was right what I did. You cannot be right all the time. But I was 70% right whenever companies or things or airline businesses or whatever go in one direction. I say to myself right away, I do the opposite, because you can't be wrong. And I tell you, sometimes it helps, this kind of view, just to see they're all going there, and I don't like it, because they're all going there. So I say to myself, no, I go in this direction. And then they all say, he's completely crazy. And then you have to wait. You have to wait. Yeah? And then suddenly something happens and everybody's running. Then you have the first corner and the second corner, and then you really go in the other direction. So it is always good, at least for me, and maybe for one of you people as well, to always question yourself is this what my people around me, the companies, the opposition, if they all go in the same direction, this is correct. If you start the opposite, you're different. So now you have to see, is different good or bad? And I can tell you, most of the time it's good. Because it gives you a new idea, it gives you a new direction, it motivates people to say, okay, this is a challenge, let's do it the other way around. And this is basically what I've learned all through my life. Thank you. Huh?
Thank you, Mr. Lauda. You can have a seat if you want.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will all go the other direction to be successful. This was a very nice thought. I was thinking of it a little bit longer, that's why I'm late on the stage now. Dámy a páni, Myslím si, že teraz bude dosť veľa času na to, aby ste trošku pouvažovali nad tým, čo ste počuli, trošku strávili tieto myšlienky a strávili možno aj niečo, čo je v ponuke v rámci coffee breaku. 15 minút máme na to. Neviem, koľko je teraz hodín. 3/4 riadíme sa podľa generálneho riaditeľa, takže porovnajme si časy. Je 3/4. O celej vás poprosím, aby sme tu boli naozaj presne a potom si robíme tzv. Wrap up a budeme sa venovať aj vašim otázkam. Mr. Lauda, after 15 minutes we will meet here again and we will do some questioning. We will do the questions, you will do the answers. Okay. Thank you. Takže užite si coffee break, vidíme sa o 15 minút.